Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, one of the most persistent urban legends in music. Paul is dead.
That's right. The idea that Paul McCartney, died at the height of Beatlemania and was secretly replaced.
We're looking at sources like the Beatles Unveiled to really unpack this. Where did it start? What's the so called evidence? And why does it still stick around?
Well, you have to picture the scene first. It's 1966. The Beatles are arguably the biggest band on the planet, just massive.
Absolutely huge. And they just stopped touring, right? Feeling the pressure.
Exactly. Intense pressure. So they retreated into the studio, a hugely creative time, but also maybe a bit more mysterious from the outside.
And then this minor incident happens. Early 67, Paul has a small car accident. Moped, actually, I think.
Right, a moped accident. He got a cut lip, chipped tooth, minor stuff. But somehow that little event kind of morphs in the background.
It becomes the seed, doesn't it?
It seems like it. But the real explosion, that comes later. October 1969.
Ah, the Detroit radio station, WKNR FM.
That's the one. Russ Gibbs show. A caller phones in, laying this whole theory. Paul's dead. Look at the album covers. Listen to the songs backward.
And it just catches fire, goes global. Media frenzy. Everyone suddenly playing detective with Beatles records.
It really did. So the core theory, the one that solidified then, was that the real accident wasn't the moped one.
No, it was supposedly a fatal car crash, November 1966.
Uh-huh. Paul supposedly stormed out of a recording session, drove off, crashed, and died. And the story goes, the band, the management, they covered it up.
To avoid mass hysteria, to keep the band going.
That's the idea. And crucially, they supposedly found a replacement. A look-alike contest winner named William Campbell, or sometimes called William Shears Campbell.
Okay, so that's the basic story. But then people started finding proof, right?
Oh, yeah. Almost immediately after that radio show, a student newspaper writer, Fred Labor, wrote this satirical piece kind of outlining clues he'd found.
But people took it seriously.
Some did, absolutely. He pointed to the Street Peppers cover, the famous one with the crowd.
What specifically?
Well, the whole thing could look like a funeral or a gravesite if you squinted, right? There's a floral arrangement below the band name.
Some people saw Paul in the flowers or interpreted the yellow flowers as a left-handed bass guitar, Paul's instrument.
Exactly. And then there's the patch on Paul's arm. OPD.
Officially pronounced dead.
That's what the theory claimed. Though, it actually stood for Ontario Provincial Police, a standard uniform patch.
But facts didn't seem to matter much once the ball was rolling.
Not really. And it wasn't just sheep peppers. Then came Abbey Road.
Oh, the iconic crossing photo. That one got dissected too.
Big time. The interpretation was a funeral procession. John in white is the priest or heavenly figure. Ringo in black, the undertaker.
George in denim as the gravedigger.
And Paul, barefoot, out of step, eyes closed. The corpse.
Wow. And the license plate on the VW Beetle in the background? LMW 28IF?
Yep. People read that as Linda McCartney weeps, though he wasn't married to Linda then. And 28IF, meaning Paul would have been 28 if he'd lived.
Even though he was actually 27 when the album came out?
Details. Details. And him holding a cigarette in his right hand. Paul was famously left-handed. Another clue.
So visual evidence piled up. What about the music itself? That radio show played stuff backward, didn't it?
They did. The most famous one is from Revolution 9, that experimental track. Played backward. Some people heard Turn Me On, Dead Man. Definitely adds to the mystique. And then lyrics from other songs were reinterpreted.
Like A Day in the Life. He blew his mind out in a car?
Precisely. Very direct sounding in this context. And the chaotic orchestral build-up in that song, seen as representing the crash itself.
Okay, I see how that could fit. Any others?
Lovely Rita has the line, when I caught a glimpse of Rita, supposedly referencing a meter maid Paul was distracted by before the crash. Bit of a stretch, maybe?
Seems like it. What about Come Together?
The line one and one is three. Simple math, but interpreted as only three Beatles remaining.
And Golden Slumbers supposedly sounded like an elegy.
Mm-hmm. It all feeds into this narrative once you start looking for it,
So, stepping back from the specific clues, what does this whole phenomenon tell us? It's really a testament to the power of myth, isn't it?
Absolutely. Myth-making, storytelling, especially around celebrities we feel we know, it taps into something deep.
A desire to find hidden meanings, to feel like you're in on a secret the rest of the world missed.
Yeah, the desire to uncover conspiracies, hidden truths. It's very human. And the 60s, remember, were a time of huge cultural shifts, questioning authority.
Counterculture, yeah. So maybe this fit into that spirit of looking beyond the official story.
I think so. It was a kind of collective puzzle solving, even if the puzzle pieces didn't really fit logically.
And it's amazing how it endures. Paul McCartney is obviously still very much with us, performing, creating, yet the Paul is dead story still pops up.
It does. It became part of the Beatles lore, part of that era's cultural fabric. It shows how these narratives can take on a life of their own.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Why are we as humans so drawn to these hidden narratives, these elaborate conspiracy theories, even when faced with overwhelming evidence against them?
What need do they fill? Think about modern myths or online theories that grab hold today. What's the appeal? Something to ponder.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.